Hi everyone, and welcome back to another tutorial. In this tutorial, I'm going to carry on the section 5 and 8 of the tutorial on SASE observability on how to integrate Meraki MX using Logstash into Elastic Cloud. So a quick recap. In the last video, we've gone through the setup of Elastic Cloud, configuring Logstash, Meraki MX, and using Grok to map the events, right? And so in today's session, I will cover the section 5 to 8, which is, you know, adding an index to Logstash configuration so that we can send the logs properly to Elastic Cloud. And then we'll just do a quick verification on the output console. Then I'll show you how to create an index in Kibana, right, in Elastic Cloud itself. And then last but not least, we'll just use Discover to check the logs that are being sent inside, and at the same time enable Logstash service so we can automate the sending of logs to Elastic Cloud. So now let's hop over to the console. Okay, quick recap. The configuration file is inside backslash etc backslash logstash, right? So if you look at it, we'll be using the same config file, Meraki mx.config file. Now let's do a nano. So quick recap, over in the syslog collectors, we have configured the collection of Meraki mx flow, right? Using port 9525. We've done a Grok pattern filter whereby we have mapped the username, source IP, destination, and etc. Right? And of course, we have output the logs to the console and the file. So in this section, I'll show you how to configure to add or to put the output to Elastic Cloud itself, right? So what we do is to do Elastic search, right? We need to put in the host. Let's hop over to the console to show you where to get the host. So from the console or the home screen, what you can do is to go back to the deployment and then click on copy endpoint. Hop back to the host itself. Remember the syntax. I'm going to destroy the instance after this, so you're not going to spend time masking it. Right, next we want to do is to give it an index, right? So this is all you need to do to get the index in properly. So I'm going to give it a name called Meraki flows. So the naming convention and etc. Depends on how your organization uses naming convention process and stuff, right? So this is one of the way to quickly ingest logs and index the logs as it goes into Elastic Cloud or Elasticsearch, right? So we want to basically put in percentage and then give identify by the date, right? Year, month, day, right? And then close the bracket. So once that's done, the other part that you need to do is to put in the username and password. Now, it depends on whether you are deploying this on Elastic Cloud or your on-prem ELK stack, right? So the configuration is very similar. I'm using it for Elastic Cloud, so I will need to put in the username for Elastic. From the password perspective, right? Key in the password that you are asked to remember or to save in the early deployment, right? So I'm going to put that in a bit. And that's all you need to, right, to configure for ingesting the logs into Elastic Cloud. So a couple of difference between the local host, right, when you're setting up ELK on premises locally, you usually use the local host or the local IP address. Now for Elastic, you will need to put in the endpoint of the deployment that I've shown you earlier. Now username and password, right? You need to basically put in your own respective username and password, right? And that's all, right? That's how easy it is to start ingesting logs into Elastic. Took me a while to figure out by going through the documentation, right? And testing it out, right? But for simplicity and lab purposes, I thought of doing this so that you guys can save some time in your research. So once that's done, Control O for Nano to write the file, and then I'm going to exit this file, right? I'm going to put in the actual password so that we can kickstart the process. Okay, once that is done, let's launch Logstash to test. Okay, if you remember, the command is inside user share Logstash bin Logstash, right? And -f is where we are using it to test. I've kept the config reload automatic. For testing, I usually use that extension so that I don't have to relaunch Logstash every time I change the config. So we're doing the etc and max config file. Okay, let's run it. Okay, ignore the duplication, right? This is all you need to do. Okay, let's copy it again. Okay, you can see that Logstash is started. We are healthily mapping the logs with our Grok pattern, right? If you remember from our last tutorial, these are the custom mappings that we have done, right? So we'll let the logs run. Let's now hop over to the Elastic console. All right, so let's hop over to deployment and then click on Kibana here, right, to launch or to go back to Kibana. Okay, as you can see, when it is a fresh install, there won't be anything when you come into the Elastic dashboard. So first thing what you want to do is to go over and click on the three lines here. And then first thing we want to do is to look into indexing, right? So you can go into stack management and then select Kibana index pattern, right? This is just one of the way. There are many ways you can configure Elastic, right? So if it's slightly different from what you have seen, don't worry. Right, by default, Elastic Cloud already have metrics and logs that are created for Elastic own use, right? So we're not going to go through that. What we're going to do is to go to create pattern, right? And then click on create pattern, right? So by default, you have a whole range of, default patterns that are there or index that are there. So we're going to look for Meraki. Now, if you configure correctly, you'll see that Meraki, which is the name followed by dash and the timestamp, right, is actually the date is actually used as the index pattern, right, or is as a file or the pipeline coming in. So we'll select that and then click on create index. Of course, by default, you can choose to use the timestamp or you do not want to use timestamp. So we're going to use that, right? It creates a standardized indexing, right? Especially when you have more log sources coming in. Then click on create index. You will see that the index has been created, right? Couple of things to take note is that with there are ID index that are created by default. There are custom fields and password that are there, right? And then you can see there are custom source that we have created and tags and etc. Right? So by default, Elastic is able to map out the field automatically and take in the Grok filter as well, right? So we're not going to go into that in depth into how do you change the tags and whatnot. But what I want to show you is that this is how you quickly set up Logstash to send logs into Elastic. Always remember you need to have the index in your configuration file. If not, you can't really see or discover the logs, right? For you to do any other enhancements in terms of custom mapping rules or even dashboard. So this is all you need to do to configure to get the logs in. Next, we'll make use of the discover function under analytics to check the logs that are coming in, right? So by default, there's nothing there. So what you want to do is to select the source, right? So over here, we're going to select Meraki MX. And immediately you can see that the logs are being sent into Elastic, right? So, and you can see that the custom source port, and also the destination, host name, some of the customization or the Grok patterns that we have mapped are in. Of course, right, we are also sending in the raw log so that you can do any other customization, whether from the console or in the Elastic dashboard itself, right? And that is all. That is to configure Logstash and Elastic Cloud. Now, next, what I'm going to show you is how to set this or automate the pipeline and the log collection. So now we're going to stop this, right? As you can see, all the fields are mapped respectively and there's no error. So I'm going to end this task. Next, what we'll do now is just to do a quick verification, right? Status of our Logstash. Okay, as you can see, Logstash is disabled by default. Now, to automate this collection, there are a few places we need to go into. First, we need to go into pipelines.yaml, right? Okay, you can see that by default, right, all the pipelines will be executed under the config.d directory, right, inside etc's log/. Right, so what we're going to do is to copy this and then go to the folder. Right, you can see that by default it's blank. So what we're going to do is to copy or move, depending on where the following file from /etc/logstash to our folder here, right? Let's make sure that it's in there and check our directory. Yes, so we are in the following directory. We have the Meraki mx.config file. Okay, so once that is done, what we want to do is to enable Logstash service if you want to be exact, so that Logstash gets automatically started every time the system restarts. Right, so you can see that a symlink is being created, and then symbolic ring is being created. And every time the system restarts, you will start Logstash, right? And then what we can do is to okay, now before that, right? For those of you who are familiar with Linux, you know where to find your logs file, right? So Logstash files are being stored in Logstash, right? As you can see right now, it is empty, right? If we do a tail F, they'll tell you that, there is no files. There are no files remaining inside, right? Or we can always do a ls/var/log/logstash. You can see that that folder currently is empty. Now, when we start the Elastic or the Logstash service, right, which is systemctl start, Logstash dot service. Okay, you will see that we should have the logs coming in. Okay, we can see that the Logstash service is active. Okay, you can see that the logs is actually going in, right? And then there's an error on Logstash pipeline and then Logstash. So let's go over and check out the. Okay, you can see that the logs are coming in now. So let's do a tail -f Logstash. Oops. Okay, let's check out for any errors. There's an error, right? Pipeline error. Pipeline will stop. Trace. Okay, so the log files are not being write to the logs folder, which is fine because okay, so it looks okay. Now let's hop back to the Kibana console and let's do a quick check of the logs coming in, right? We just need to make sure that the logs are coming in. Okay, now, okay, while we refresh, you can see that the timestamp 1437, and then when we do a refresh, okay, we're not seeing the logs coming in. Something is wrong. Oh, sorry, the pipeline is terminated. Okay, we started. Okay, buffer is correct. Okay, let's take out the log files, right? So, okay, let me do one thing. Let's stop this first, right? Okay, let's do a nano. Okay, let's go back to. Okay, let's modify the RKMX config file. Okay, so I still have the file pipe done, right? So what I'm going to do is to actually just remove them. Command off. I forgot the command to. So if you remember in my last tutorial, we might have used the if else command to make sure that different logs are being sent to different path, right? So that could be causing the error. Okay, it's okay. Need to. Okay, once that's done, let's save this. And let's try and start the. Okay, let's keep the listener on and then let's run. Let's start Logstash. Oops, sorry. Okay. I think we're starting Logstash. You can see that it's being started. Okay, we can see that it's starting. And it started, right? So it's listening for UDP listener started. So we don't have that permission error. We could have changed the folder permission by using the change owner or change mode, right? So however, not gonna do that in this tutorial. Now if we hop back to the Logstash and we do a refresh, we should see, you can see the logs is coming in now. Now if we look at the logs, right, same thing. We can see that the logs are being sent in, right? The customization of the source and destination is done, right? And that's how easy it is to configure and integrate Logstash into Elastic Cloud, right? And it is very much similar when if you're doing this for the ELK configuration as well. Okay, so with that, thank you so much for the time, right? I might do a few more slightly more advanced tutorial as well as getting in a few log sources such as logs from Firepower, Umbrella, and stuff, right? So that we can actually use the logs for analysis in the future video. So thank you very much. Take care and stay safe.